Hello, JT Gentry here. I am so excited to share this Book of Mormon project with you all. The Book of Mormon is true, and it's been such an amazing blessing in my life. My love of the Book of Mormon started at a very young age, and I believe a large contributing factor to that was my unique heritage. President Ezra Taft Benson is actually my great-grandfather, and I am so blessed because of this. His love of the Book of Mormon not only impacted him and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but it impacted his family, and that impact has spanned generations. For this project, I wanted to get documented footage from his posterity so that I could report just how his love of the Book of Mormon has blessed generations to come. I hope you enjoy.
Oh my goodness, because it was such an important part of my life, because it was so important in his life, and we knew that, and we knew it was true, and his testimony to us every day, home evenings, doesn't matter when, we loved to talk about the Book of Mormon, and he'd always bear that testimony. I have a copy of, I think, one of my favorite testimonies that he has about the Book of Mormon, which I can read. It's very, I think, powerful. He said, "My beloved brethren and sisters, today I would like to speak about one of the most significant gifts to the world in modern times. The gift I am thinking of is more important than any of the inventions that have come out of the industrial or technological revolutions. This is a gift of greater value to mankind than even the many wonderful advances we have seen in modern medicine. It is of greater worth to mankind than the development of flight or space travel. I speak of the gift of the Book of Mormon." I think that's tells you the value of what we have in having that wonderful scripture and testimony that the church is true. And I love that. And then he goes on and tells different reasons why the members of the church and all of us should know that it's true. And it's his here. Let me just read one more at the end of this. It says, "It is not just that the Book of Mormon teaches us truth, though indeed it does that. It is not just that the Book of Mormon bears testimony of Christ, though indeed it does that. But there is something more. There is a power in the book which will begin to flow into your lives the moment you begin a serious study of the book. You will find greater power to resist temptation. You will find the power to avoid deception. You will find the power to stay on the straight and narrow path. The scriptures are called the words of life, and nowhere is it truer than in the Book of Mormon. When you begin to hunger and thirst after those words, you will find life is of greater and greater abundance." This is my prayer, and then he does his testimony. What more can you say? It's a powerful book and a blessing to every one of us, and we are so blessed to have it and know it's true.
And I would have to say that for me, knowing that Grandpa loved the Book of Mormon encouraged me to want to read the Book of Mormon and to study it and to love it as much as he did.
So Grandpa Benson's love of the Book of Mormon has shaped my life in so many ways. His conviction and his knowledge of the power and the truth of the Book of Mormon was absolutely undeniable. I, obviously, like everyone else, got my own testimony of the Book of Mormon at a very young age, but having him as a grandpa and hearing him talk and recount and tell us his testimony was something I will never forget. JT asked me to recount an incident that I was able to be so blessed to be a part of. It was actually the general conference when Grandpa talked about flooding the earth with the Book of Mormon. And the day after conference on Monday, I stopped by his office to say goodbye. I was still in high school and I had just flown over for conference. And I was able to spend some one-on-one time with him and Grandma, which wasn't able to normally do because he had so many grandkids and he was so busy. But we went to his apartment and had lunch. And then he asked if I wanted to go into the study with he and Grandma and read to them from the Book of Mormon. And it was such a surreal experience for me, but it was such a spiritual experience. Here he was, the prophet who had just given a talk about flooding the earth with the Book of Mormon. And here I was, a high school girl sitting down in the study with he and Grandma and reading the Book of Mormon to them. It's something I will never forget. It was such a testimony builder and such a sweet experience. He just had such a firm testimony of the Book of Mormon, and I was just so grateful that he was able to share it with me.
growing up, I always felt a special connection to Ezra Taft Benson's conference talks, and I loved listening to them, especially as I got older during my high school years. One night in particular, I remember I felt impressed to listen to just one of Grandpa Benson's talks, and I don't remember the title of the talk whatsoever, but I remember it was one of his talks about the Book of Mormon, and I remember he quoted the Book of Alma. He quoted Alma 26:3. And in Alma 26, that's when Ammon is kind of giving a little bit of a recap to his brothers about the wonderful things that they did together through the work of the Lord. And I remember in verse 3 in particular, Grandpa Benson quoted verse 3 and quoted Ammon when he says that, we've done all this work essentially, but the greatest blessing that we'll ever have is to be an instrument in the Lord's hands. And I always remembered that throughout my mission, and since that moment, that one of the greatest blessings that we'll ever have, no matter what we do or where we go, will be to share the gospel and to share the Book of Mormon with others.
Georgia, what do you think about Grandpa Benson and the Book of Mormon? I think it's clear that Georgia is taking to heart Nephi's admonition to feast on the words of Christ. Speaking of favorite scriptures, though, I also wanted to get video recordings of Ezra Taft Benson's posterity talking about their love of the Book of Mormon and the scriptures that have impacted them and how they saw those scriptures exemplified in the life of President Benson. For me personally, one of my favorite scriptures in the Book of Mormon is found in Mosiah 2:41. I love how King Benjamin talks about the blessed and happy state of those that keep the commandments of God. He talks about how they're blessed in all things, both temporally and spiritually. I have seen this scripture come to pass in my life. Life is difficult for so many of us, and there are going to be ups and downs. But the joy that the gospel brings is a unique joy that is so profound and so wonderful and can overcome any challenge that life can throw at us. And I'm so grateful for this knowledge and for the blessing that it is in my life when I encounter trials.
One of my favorite scriptures is in Alma, chapter 56, verses 47 and 48, and it's talking about the moms of the army of Helaman, and that's actually a shout out to my grandma Benson, who taught that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. She had such a testimony of the power of mothers. And so those scriptures, the ones about the mothers, and they rehearsed unto me that the words of their mothers, saying, we do not doubt, our mothers knew it. They're my Book of Mormon heroes, and that's one of my favorite scriptures in the Book of Mormon. And it's a homage to my sweet grandma Benson, who had such a testimony of the power of mothers and motherhood. So once again, I'm so grateful to have had this heritage and to have the testimony that I have of the Book of Mormon. And I'm just a very blessed person, and hopefully I've been able to pass it on to my children.
That has to be Helaman chapter 5, verse 12, which says, and now my sons, remember that it is upon the rock of our Redeemer, who is Christ, the Son of God, that ye must build your foundation, that when the devil shall send forth his mighty winds, yea, his shafts in the whirlwind, yea, when all his hail and his mighty storm shall beat upon you, it shall have no power over you to drag you down to the gulf of misery and endless woe, because of the rock upon which ye are built, which is a sure foundation, the foundation whereon if men build, they cannot fall. And I think that that scripture really basically summarizes Grandpa's life. He's certainly built his foundation on Christ, and exemplified Christ in his life as a father and grandfather and as a leader of the church.
And when he carries the flag and the priorities of God, family, and country. And that was the priority I saw my dad have all his life. And I think that's the right priorities all of us should have. God, family, country. And I'm grateful for that as far as priorities. And I think memories, how in our family we would talk about these things so much, and they would live that, Mom and Dad would. And we're such a good example to let me know that's where it's at. So we are blessed, so blessed to have this great book and the gospel.